I am Gladys Lawson, a 78-year-old woman from the small town of Oak Ridge. I've spent most of my life in this quiet place, raising my children, doting on my grandchildren, and never once imagining that one day I would be the center of an explosive family secret. My life had always been full of love, but with that love came the harsh lessons that you only learn through experience. I had always been close to my son, James. He was my firstborn, the one I nurtured through his highs and lows, the one I sacrificed so much for. When he married Monica, I was overjoyed. Monica was lovely, polite, respectful, and seemed to adore James. But things began to change when James' career took off. Suddenly, he was consumed by success, and less by the family who had supported him from the very beginning. But I didn't mind. I knew what success could do to people. I had seen it before. It wasn't long before I learned that James and Monica had a big wedding planned for their son, my grandson Adam. I was thrilled at the thought of watching my little boy, the child I used to cradle in my arms, become a man. The wedding was scheduled to take place at the grandest venue in Oak Ridge, costing a whopping $55,000. Now, that's something most families could only dream of, but James and Monica had been saving for it for years. Or so I thought. The day I arrived at the venue was supposed to be a moment of joy, a moment to watch my grandson try on his wedding suit for the first time. I was eager, excited even, to share that special moment with him. I walked into the room, greeted by the laughter of my family, the gentle clinking of glasses, and the hustle of the wedding planners. But as soon as I stepped into that room, everything felt different. There was Adam, standing before the mirror, his face lighting up as he looked at himself in the suit. He looked handsome and proud. But as I moved closer to give him a hug, my son, James, pulled me aside. "Mom," James whispered sharply, his voice tight with tension, "don't embarrass us today. Not here, not now." My heart dropped. What did he mean by that? My stomach twisted in knots. Was I going to embarrass them by simply showing up? By being there for my grandson? I tried to shake it off, but James' words echoed in my ears. He was usually so loving, so understanding. This wasn't like him at all. Then the moment hit me. It wasn't just the words that stung. It was the way James looked at me, like I was a burden, a nuisance, something to be hidden away. I had always given him everything I had. Every bit of love. Every ounce of my energy. And now this? Now I was a burden? I walked back to my seat, heart heavy with confusion, but a plan was beginning to form in my mind. I wasn't just going to sit here quietly and let my family treat me like this. Not after all I had done. Not after all I had sacrificed. But little did James know, there was something he didn't know about the wedding venue. Something he didn't know about the money that was paying for it all. The $55,000 venue? I paid for it. All of it. And as the wedding day approached, I knew it was time for the truth to come out. But how would I reveal it? Would I let the truth slip out quietly? Or would I do something far more drastic to ensure that my family would never forget the value of my love, loyalty, and support? The tension built. I wasn't just a quiet grandmother anymore. I was about to make a statement, and the world would know who had truly paid the price for this lavish celebration. The days leading up to the wedding felt like a whirlwind. The tension between James and me only grew, but no one seemed to notice. Monica was busy with the final details of the wedding, while Adam was caught up in his excitement. But I could feel it, an invisible wall between me and my son, a wall built out of silence, disdain, and something darker I couldn't quite place. I kept telling myself that I needed to stay quiet, that I needed to let the day unfold without causing a scene. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that staying silent would only mean continuing to let my son and his wife walk all over me. They had forgotten who I was. They had forgotten what I had done. The night before the wedding, I found myself sitting alone in my kitchen. It was late, and the house was still, save for the ticking of the clock. I looked at the checkbook sitting on the counter, the one I had written the check from to cover the venue. It had been my decision to help my family, my decision to show them I cared. But now, that decision felt like it had been turned against me. I thought about how James had barely spoken to me in the past few weeks. How his wife had never once looked me in the eye during all the wedding planning. How Adam, the little boy I had raised, hadn't called or visited once since the engagement. The wedding day was almost here, and yet I felt like an outsider in my own family. I could still remember the moment I wrote the check for the venue. I had hoped it would be a gesture of love, a way to show James that I supported him, supported their dream. But now, as I sat in the darkness of my kitchen, I realized that I had done something far bigger than I had intended. I had bought their love. But love, I was beginning to understand, could never be bought. It had to be earned, and my son had forgotten how to earn it. I wasn't going to let this go. I couldn't. I had to remind them of what I had done. I had to make sure that my family understood the true cost of the wedding. The next morning, as everyone rushed around preparing for the big day, I pulled aside the wedding planner. Her name was Laura, a sharp, efficient woman who had been handling everything with ease. She had no idea what was coming. "I need you to do something for me," I said, my voice low but firm. She looked at me curiously, her brows furrowed. "What is it, Mrs. Lawson?" I leaned in, speaking just above a whisper. "When the wedding begins tomorrow, I need you to make sure that James and Monica understand where the money for this venue came from. I want them to hear it from you, loud and clear." Laura's eyes widened. "You're sure about this?" I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. "I'm more than sure." I knew the truth would be explosive, but I didn't care. James and Monica needed to understand that I had paid the price for their dream. That nothing in this world came for free, not even love. It was time for them to see just how much I had sacrificed. As the evening unfolded, I could sense the chaos simmering just beneath the surface. Everyone was distracted with preparations, with the flowers, the music, the food. But I wasn't distracted. My mind was fixed on one thing, and one thing only, the moment when the truth would come out. As I watched my family from the corner of the room, I couldn't help but wonder how they would react. Would they be shocked? Would they be ashamed? Would they finally understand the depth of my love, the sacrifices I had made for them? I didn't know, but I was about to find out. The morning of the wedding arrived, and I could feel the weight of the secret pressing down on me. I had made my decision, and there was no turning back. As the family scurried about in preparation for the ceremony, I found myself standing alone by the window, looking out at the sprawling estate. The sun was bright, the flowers in full bloom, but it didn't matter. My heart was heavy with the knowledge of what was about to unfold. I dressed slowly, carefully, taking my time. The gown I wore was simple but elegant, a deep emerald green that contrasted sharply with the glittering chaos of the wedding preparations outside. I wasn't sure if I was dressing for the wedding or for the moment I knew would come later. I could hear the chatter from the other side of the house, the laughter, the excitement. But I couldn't bring myself to join in. My son had never once looked at me with pride, not in the way he used to. But today would be different. Today, they would see me for who I really was. The woman who had given everything for them, only to be dismissed like an afterthought. The wedding was scheduled to take place in the Grand Hall, a venue that took my breath away the first time I stepped inside. The chandeliers sparkled above, casting soft golden light over the guests as they arrived, dressed in their finest. The smell of flowers and fresh linen filled the air, mixing with the sound of chatter and laughter. But I barely noticed the splendor. All I could think about was the moment when I would finally speak the truth. As I walked down the hall toward the ceremony, I noticed the looks people gave me. They were polite, but distant. I was a part of the family, but I was an outsider now, someone who didn't belong in this world of wealth and opulence. James and Monica were busy with last-minute details, their attention focused on the ceremony, but I could see them exchange looks of impatience whenever I came near. They didn't want me there, and that was fine. I didn't need their approval. I was here to make sure they never forgot what I had done for them. The wedding ceremony was beautiful, everything meticulously planned, from the soft music to the exchanged vows. But I couldn't focus on any of that. My eyes kept darting back to James, who stood at the front, his eyes gleaming with pride as he watched his son and his future daughter-in-law. He looked so happy, so sure of himself. I couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy. wondering when I would ever get that same sense of certainty. As the ceremony wrapped up and the guests filed into the reception hall, I made my way over to Laura, the wedding planner. She was busy coordinating the food and drinks, but I caught her eye from across the room. She nodded in acknowledgement, and we met near the back of the room, where the guests couldn't see us. "Is everything ready?" I asked, my voice steady despite the nerves churning in my stomach. Laura looked at me with a mixture of concern and curiosity. "Are you sure about this, Mrs. Lawson?" I nodded firmly. I've never been more sure. She took a deep breath, then nodded. "I'll make sure it happens as planned." I could feel my heart racing as I stepped back into the crowd. The next part of the plan was in motion, and there was no turning back. The guests had gathered, and the speeches were about to begin. I stood near the back, away from the others, but I could hear the laughter, the clinking of glasses, the toasts. Everything seemed so perfect, so flawless. And then it was time. Laura stepped up to the microphone, her voice cutting through the noise of the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her tone both formal and warm, "I have something very important to share with you." The room grew quiet, the energy shifting as people turned toward her. I stood there, barely breathing, knowing that the next few words would change everything. Before we continue with the evening, I think it's only fitting that we acknowledge the incredible generosity of someone who has been at the heart of this celebration. Laura paused, letting the words sink in. "The wedding venue, the food, the decorations, and everything you see tonight has been made possible by none other than Gladys Lawson, the grandmother of the groom." Gasps filled the room. People exchanged confused glances, but I could see the shock on my son's face. He was staring at me, his mouth agape, disbelief written all over him. He hadn't known. He hadn't known that I had paid for everything. The venue, the flowers, the catering, everything that made this wedding what it was. I had covered the cost. I had done it because I thought it would be my way of showing them I cared, of showing them how much I loved them. But now, as the truth spilled into the room, I could see it. The realization dawning on James. The discomfort. The guilt. The shame. The room fell into an awkward silence as my son slowly made his way toward me, his face turning red with anger and disbelief. His eyes narrowed as he whispered, "You couldn't have." I held my ground, refusing to let him diminish me. "I did, James. I did it all. And now, you'll have to live with the knowledge of what you've taken for granted." But just as I prepared to walk away from him, I noticed something strange in his expression. His mouth moved, but no words came out. For the first time in years, I saw him break down in front of me. But I wasn't about to let him off the hook so easily. There was more to this story, and it wasn't over yet. The air in the room felt thick, suffocating, as I stood face to face with my son. The once proud, self-assured man who had been so eager to present his perfect life was now visibly shaken, his eyes flickering between guilt and frustration. Monica, who had been standing near the bar, quickly joined him. Her face, usually so composed, had lost all color as she glanced between James and me. "Mom, why?" James's voice trembled, the words barely escaping his lips. He seemed to be trying to understand why I had kept such a monumental secret, why I had waited until this very moment to reveal the truth. I stared at him, my heart heavy but resolute. "You've been so busy, James, so caught up in your success and Monica's ambitions that you forgot about the ones who helped you get there. You forgot about the people who supported you when you had nothing. You forgot about me." Monica stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. "This is ridiculous. Why would you do this, Gladys? This is supposed to be a special day for Adam, and you think this day is about Adam?" I interrupted, my voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "You think this wedding is about anything other than money? Look at what you've turned it into. You're so focused on appearances, on showing off how rich and successful you've become, that you've forgotten the very people who made that success possible." The room was silent as the truth sank in. James and Monica stood there, not knowing what to say, but I could see the shame creeping onto their faces. For years, They had treated me like I was invisible, as if the love I had given them meant nothing. But now, in front of everyone, they were facing the consequences of their neglect. It felt like a victory, but I wasn't done. I wasn't going to let them off the hook just yet. "I did this for you, James," I continued, my voice steady, despite the storm inside me. "I gave you everything, my time, my money, my love. And this is how you repay me? By pushing me aside, by making me feel like I don't matter?" I could see the realization in his eyes now, the walls beginning to crack. I didn't know," he whispered. "I never meant for it to be like this, Mom. I didn't realize." "That's the problem, James. You never realized," I said, cutting him off. "You were too busy chasing your dreams to remember where you came from. Too busy to see the person who had been standing beside you all along, waiting for you to see her." Monica, her expression one of frustration and disbelief, looked at James, as if expecting him to do something, anything, to make the situation right. But he didn't move. He didn't speak. He just stood there, like a man frozen in time. I looked at him for a long moment, watching the weight of his guilt settle over him. I could tell he didn't know what to do, how to fix the mess he had created. And frankly, I didn't care. He had to face the consequences of his actions. It was the only way he would ever learn. "Mom, I'm sorry," James finally said, his voice filled with regret. "I didn't know. I didn't realize how much you've done for us. For me." His eyes welled up with tears. "I've taken you for granted, and I've hurt you." Monica stood there, still looking like she didn't know how to react. Her face remained stoic, but I could see the flicker of unease in her eyes. She had been so focused on her own ambitions, her own image, that she had forgotten the true meaning of family. "Sorry doesn't cut it, James," I said, my voice firm. "You've lost something far more important than money or a lavish wedding. You've lost the trust of the person who would do anything for you, the person who gave you everything." I could see James struggle with his emotions. His hands clenched into fists at his sides, and his face turned red as he fought back the tears. "What do you want me to do, Mom? How can I make it right?" I took a deep breath, letting the silence linger for a moment before responding. "Start by showing up for me, by showing me the respect I deserve, and by putting your family first for once, before your career, before your image. Show me that you can be the man I raised you to be." The room was so quiet that I could hear the soft shuffle of feet, the whispers of guests who were beginning to realize what was happening. And then, in a moment of unexpected grace, James stepped forward. His arms opened, and he pulled me into an embrace. For a moment, I stood there, stiff in his arms, unsure of what to do. But then I let go, letting my guard down just enough to accept his apology, to feel the warmth of the son I had raised. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered again. "I promise you, things will be different from now on." But as we stood there, in the midst of the wedding reception, a voice in my head reminded me that actions spoke louder than words. James may have apologized, but the real question was, could he change? As I looked around the room, I saw Monica watching us, her arms crossed over her chest. The look in her eyes told me she wasn't happy with the turn of events. She hadn't said a word since I exposed the truth, but I could tell she was simmering with anger. I knew that I hadn't heard the last of her yet. But right now, I didn't care about Monica. I didn't care about the wedding. I cared about one thing, making sure my son truly understood the cost of the choices he had made. The rest of the evening seemed like a blur. The grand wedding reception that should have been a joyful celebration of love quickly became a battleground of emotions. While James and I stood in the center of the room, his arms still around me, trying to make amends, I couldn't ignore the simmering anger that radiated from Monica. I could feel her eyes on us, watching, judging. I pulled away from James reluctantly, my eyes scanning the room for Monica. Her posture was stiff, her arms crossed, and her face tight, with barely concealed fury. She wasn't even pretending to hide it anymore. She was mad. But at who? At me for calling out the truth, or at herself for the role she had played in all this. James seemed oblivious to her seething glare. He was too caught up in trying to make up for the years of neglect. But I knew Monica better than anyone. I knew her ambitions, her need for control, and her obsession with appearances. She wouldn't let this go so easily. Monica's voice broke the silence, cutting through the tension that had settled over the room. "You have no right to do this, Gladys," she said, her tone sharp. "This is supposed to be Adam's day, and you've ruined it with your drama." I turned to face her, my heart pounding. There it was. The judgment. The arrogance. Monica had always expected everyone to bow down to her version of what was right, but I wasn't going to take it anymore. I wasn't going to let her manipulate the situation or make me feel small. "Ruined it," I echoed, my voice steady but strong. "What I did was remind everyone here of the truth. You and James have been so busy with your image, so caught up in your own world, that you forgot what matters. Family, loyalty, love. You can't buy those things, Monica." Her eyes narrowed as she stepped closer, her voice dripping with disdain. "You think I don't know what you're doing? You think I care about your old-fashioned values? This is a wedding, Gladys, not a family therapy session. No one wants to hear your sob story." I could feel the heat rising in my chest. "You think I'm doing this for sympathy?" I shot back. "No, Monica. I'm doing this because you've lost sight of what really matters. You've treated me like I'm invisible, like I don't exist. You've used my son, and now you're trying to use this wedding to prove something about yourself." Monica sneered. "And what about you, Gladys? You think you're above me? You think you can control everything just because you paid for the venue? You're just a bitter, old woman clinging to the past. You think you can buy respect with money? It doesn't work like that." Her words stung, but I stood my ground. "No, Monica," I said, my voice steady. "I didn't buy respect. I bought a venue for my family because I love them, but I didn't buy the truth. That's something you can't buy. And the truth is, you've been hiding behind your money, your wealth, and your perfect little world for far too long." I could see the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes now. She wasn't as confident as she had been moments ago. I had hit a nerve, and she knew it. But instead of backing down, she tried to recover, her voice sharp. "This is ridiculous. We'll talk about this later. Let's just get through the night." But I wasn't done yet. "Oh, we will," I said, my tone colder now. "We'll get through tonight, Monica. But you'll never forget what happened here. And neither will James." I looked at my son, who had been standing off to the side, watching the exchange with a blank expression. His face was pale, his jaw tight. I could tell he was struggling, torn between loyalty to his wife and the truth that had just been exposed. He looked at me with conflicted eyes, unsure of how to proceed. "James," I said quietly, "this isn't just about Monica. It's about you, too. You need to decide what kind of man you want to be. Do you want to continue living in this bubble where everything is perfect on the outside but hollow on the inside? Or do you want to be a man who values the people who love you, truly values them?" James looked at me, his face softening for the first time that evening. I saw a flicker of recognition, as if the truth had finally clicked. But before he could respond, Monica cut in again, her voice like ice. "Stop it, Gladys. You're making a scene," she hissed. "Let's just end this nonsense and enjoy the rest of the evening. It's too late for apologies now." But it wasn't too late. Not for me. Not for James. "I've said what I needed to say," I replied, turning toward the door. "You do what you need to do, Monica. But don't ever forget, I loved you both, unconditionally. I gave everything for you, but that's over now. From this moment forward, things will be different." As I walked toward the exit, I could hear the murmurs of the guests around me. The awkwardness in the air was palpable. It wasn't just me who had been affected by the truth. It was everyone in that room. Outside, the cool night air hit my face, and I felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time in years, I had spoken my truth, and it felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. But I knew this wasn't the end. Not by a long shot. I wasn't done with Monica, and I wasn't done with James either. This was only the beginning. The days following the wedding felt like a blur of emotions and silence. I had expected Monica to lash out more, to retaliate in some dramatic way, but instead, she had gone quiet. It was almost as if the tension between us had frozen in time, and she was waiting for the perfect moment to strike back. I could feel it, though, like the calm before the storm. James, on the other hand, had been distant. His phone calls were short, his visits rare, and every time I saw him, he seemed more lost than the last. He had apologized repeatedly, but those words felt hollow. I knew he was struggling to reconcile the man he had become with the mother he had neglected for years. But words weren't enough anymore. I needed action. He needed to prove he was willing to rebuild what he had broken. I spent my days in silence, reflecting on everything that had transpired. My house, once filled with the hum of family and laughter, now seemed too quiet, too empty. The only noise I could hear was the rustling of the leaves outside, the occasional creak of the floorboards as I moved from room to room. But the stillness gave me space to think, and as I did, a plan began to form. I had taught James everything he knew, every lesson, every value I had instilled in him. But somewhere along the way, he had forgotten those lessons. He had become a stranger to me, so wrapped up in his success that he didn't even see the damage he was causing. But I couldn't let him off the hook. Not after everything I had given him. And I certainly wasn't going to let Monica walk away from this unscathed either. I didn't need to wait for them to come to me. I wasn't going to sit back and wait for apologies that might never come. I needed to take control of the situation. I needed to remind them both that they weren't the only ones with power in this family. That's when I made the decision to visit the lawyer. The following morning, I called and arranged an appointment with a man I had known for years, Lawrence Moore, a sharp, no-nonsense attorney who had helped me with legal matters in the past. Lawrence was in his mid-50s, with a calm demeanor and a sharp mind. He understood the intricacies of family law, and more importantly, he understood me. As I sat in his office, waiting for him to finish with his last client, I thought about how different things had become. How had my relationship with my son, the one I had worked so hard to build, ended up here? But I wasn't about to wallow in regret. Not anymore. When Lawrence finally entered the room, I stood up to greet him. His warm smile reassured me, but I could see the concern in his eyes when he noticed the look on my face. "Gladys," he said, sitting down across from me. "What brings you in today?" I took a deep breath before speaking. "I need your help, Lawrence. It's time for me to take action." Lawrence raised an eyebrow. "Action? What kind of action?" I leaned forward, my voice low but firm. "I want to make sure my family knows just how serious I am. I'm tired of being treated like I'm invisible. It's time to claim what's mine and make sure they never forget who paid the price for their success." Lawrence didn't flinch. Instead, he listened carefully, nodding slowly. "I understand. You want to assert your position in the family and make sure that your contributions aren't forgotten." I nodded, my mind clear. "Exactly. But I need more than just words. I need legal backing. I want to ensure that James and Monica are held accountable for their actions. They've taken me for granted for far too long." Lawrence's expression softened, and he gave me a reassuring smile. "We can do that. There are a few things I can help you with. But first, I need to ask you a question. Are you sure you want to do this? Once we take legal action, there's no turning back. This will change everything." I thought about it for a moment. The wedding had been the last straw. I had given them everything, and now it was time to take back what was rightfully mine. "I'm sure," I said, my voice steady. "I've spent my whole life putting everyone else first. It's time I put myself first for once." Lawrence nodded, making a few notes on his notepad. "We'll start by drafting a formal letter to James and Monica, outlining the financial contributions you've made. We'll also include the fact that you've been taken advantage of and that you expect a formal acknowledgement of your role in their lives." The weight of his words settled over me, but I didn't flinch. I had made up my mind. The time for playing nice was over. By the end of the meeting, Lawrence had agreed to start the process of sending the letter. I left his office feeling a strange sense of calm. The first step had been taken. And now, it was only a matter of time before James and Monica had to face the consequences of their actions. As I walked back to my car, I couldn't help but think about how this was going to change everything. I had no idea how they would react, but I knew one thing for sure. They weren't going to forget who had paid for everything.
Not this time.
But what I didn't know was how far Monica was willing to go to protect her image, and what she might do to stop me from revealing the truth. The days after my meeting with Lawrence passed in a blur. Each day seemed to stretch on forever as I waited for the inevitable fallout from my actions. The silence from James and Monica was deafening. They hadn't contacted me, hadn't even tried to make amends. But I knew that silence wouldn't last forever. They would eventually have to face the consequences of their choices. Then, one afternoon, I received a call from Lawrence. His voice was calm, but there was an urgency in it that immediately caught my attention. "Gladys," he said, "I've just received a response from James and Monica's lawyer. They're not taking this lightly. Monica especially is pushing back hard. She's demanding that you retract the letter and drop any claims to the money you've given them." I felt my heart sink. Of course, Monica would do this. She was too proud, too arrogant, to ever admit that she had been wrong. But I wasn't backing down.
Not now.
Not after everything I had done for them. "Let them try," I said, my voice tight with determination. "I'm not retracting anything. This is my life, my money, and I'm done being silenced." Lawrence hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "I thought you might say that, but I need you to understand the gravity of this. If Monica decides to escalate things, if she takes this to court, things could get messy. You're not just up against them. You're up against their wealth, their influence. They'll fight dirty." The weight of his words hung in the air. I knew he was right. Monica wouldn't stop until she had completely crushed me. She was calculating, ruthless, and willing to go to any lengths to protect her perfect image. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I've spent my whole life being the silent one, Lawrence. The one who's always put everyone else first. But now it's my turn. I've worked too hard, sacrificed too much to let them walk all over me, I said, my voice unwavering. Lawrence sighed, and I could hear the concern in his voice. "I understand, Gladys. But I want you to think carefully. This is a fight that could cost you more than just money. It could cost you your relationship with your son, with your family. Are you ready for that?" I took a deep breath, letting his words sink in. He was right about one thing. This would cost me. But at what point do you stop giving and start living for yourself? When do you stop being the martyr and reclaim your worth? "I'm ready," I said firmly. "Let them fight. Let them do their worst. But I won't be pushed aside anymore." Lawrence agreed to proceed with the legal action, drafting a more formal response to their lawyer's demands. He assured me that we were in a strong position, but I could tell he was worried. It wasn't just the legalities of the situation that concerned him. It was the emotional toll this would take on me. That evening, I sat alone in my living room, the weight of my decision pressing heavily on me. I had prepared myself for this moment, mentally and emotionally. But even now, the thought of losing everything I had worked for, including my relationship with James, weighed on me. The silence between us had grown deafening, and I didn't know if I could ever get him back. Then the doorbell rang. I stood up, startled, and walked cautiously to the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, certainly not James. But when I opened it, there he was, my son, standing in front of me, his face pale, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. His clothes were disheveled, as if he had just come from a long day of arguing and trying to make sense of things. "Mom," he said quietly, his voice strained, "I need to talk to you." I stepped aside to let him in, but the tension between us was palpable. This was the moment I had been waiting for. But it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like an emotional battlefield, with no clear victor in sight. We sat down across from each other, and for a long while, neither of us spoke. It was as if we were both afraid to say the wrong thing, afraid to tear down whatever fragile connection we still had. Finally, James spoke. "I got the letter, Mom. I didn't know about the venue. I didn't know what you had done for us. And I'm so sorry. I've been so focused on myself, on everything else, that I didn't see you. I didn't see what you've been doing for us all these years." His words were sincere, but the damage had been done. Apologies alone couldn't fix what had been broken. And even though I could see the remorse in his eyes, I knew that things couldn't go back to the way they were. Not yet. "James," I said, my voice steady but filled with pain. This isn't about the money.
It's about respect.
It's about you remembering who helped you when you had nothing. It's about you remembering that I am your mother, not someone you can just push aside when it's convenient for you. He nodded slowly, his eyes filled with tears. I know, Mom. I messed up. I should have been there for you. And now I see the cost of my actions. I see what I've done to you, and I want to make it right. I do. I could see the sincerity in his eyes, but I wasn't sure if I could trust him anymore. How many times had I given him my love, only to have it thrown back in my face? How many times had I put my own needs aside to support him, only to be forgotten when it mattered most? I don't know if you can, James, I whispered, my heart breaking. But you have to show me. You have to prove to me that you're willing to put me first, like I've always put you first. James nodded, wiping his eyes. I'll do whatever it takes, Mom. I promise you. But as he left my house that evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was too little, too late. Words were easy. Actions were another story. The days after James left my house felt like a slow, endless march. I couldn't shake the conversation we had, nor the weight of his apology. There was something haunting about the way he had looked at me, guilt and regret swirling in his eyes, but I couldn't help but wonder if it was too late. I had heard those words before, over and over again. I'm sorry, Mom. I'll do better. But how many times had he said those words, only for nothing to change? How many years had passed with me constantly forgiving, constantly giving, only to be ignored when I needed my son the most? I wasn't sure anymore if I even knew who James truly was. He had been the center of my world for so long, but now, as I reflected on the years of sacrifice, I felt a deep emptiness inside. I had given him everything, and for what? To be pushed aside, dismissed like an afterthought? No, I couldn't allow myself to be used again. I found myself at a crossroads, unsure of what to do next. But as the days passed, I realized something. I couldn't keep waiting for James to come around. He had made his choices, and now it was time for me to make mine. One evening, I sat down at my kitchen table, a cup of tea in front of me, and pulled out the letter Lawrence had prepared. The letter that laid out all the truths, all the facts about the money I had given to fund their wedding, the house, the cars, everything I had quietly given to help them build the life they had. It was time to take the next step. I knew James would be angry when he read it. Monica would be furious, but I didn't care anymore. I wasn't going to hide in the shadows of their lives anymore. I had made my decision. I was going to take control. If they wanted to fight, then they would have to face me. I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief as I sealed the envelope, the weight of the paper in my hands giving me a strange sense of power. This was the moment. This was the turning point. The next day, I went to the post office and sent the letter certified, ensuring they would receive it directly. I knew that once they got it, there would be no going back. James would either choose to fight for our relationship, or he would walk away, just as Monica had done so many times before. But I wasn't going to beg him. Not anymore. Later that afternoon, as I returned home, I saw a black SUV parked outside my house. My heart sank. I knew who it was before I even saw the driver. Monica. She stepped out of the car, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement as she walked toward my front door. She didn't knock. She just barged in, her eyes cold and calculated. Gladys, she said, her voice laced with a venomous sweetness. We need to talk. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I motioned for her to sit down. You're here now. What do you want? Monica didn't waste any time. You think you can just send a letter like that and expect everything to be fine? Do you really think you can control this family with your little stunt? I remained calm, watching her every move. I'm not trying to control anything, Monica. I'm just reminding everyone of the truth. The truth about who paid for all of this, the house, the wedding, everything. And I'm reminding you of the truth about what you've done to this family. Monica's eyes narrowed, her face contorting with rage. You have no idea what you're doing. Do you think James will back you in this? Do you think he'll choose you over me? Her laugh was bitter, almost mocking. You're nothing but an old woman clinging to whatever scraps of power you think you still have. James belongs to me now, Gladys. He always will. Her words hit me like a slap, but I didn't flinch. I had been slapped by the truth for years now. What could her venomous words do to me that hadn't already been done? I don't care what you think, Monica, I said, my voice steady. This isn't about me. This is about James. And this is about him realizing the choices he has made. I'm not asking for his forgiveness. I'm asking him to be a man, to own his decisions, to take responsibility for the way he's treated me, for the way you've treated me. Monica's face turned red with fury. You'll regret this, Gladys. James will never forgive you for this. You're ruining everything. I'm not ruining anything, I replied. I'm fixing what's broken. And if you can't handle that, then maybe you should leave now before things get worse. Monica didn't say another word. Instead, she stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. You'll regret underestimating me, Gladys. You don't know who you're dealing with. Before I could respond, she stormed out of the house, her heels clicking angrily as she walked away. The sound of her footsteps faded into the distance, leaving me standing in silence once again. I took a deep breath, knowing that this was just the beginning. Monica would fight back, and James... I wasn't sure where he stood anymore. But I had made my decision. I wasn't going to let them tear me down. I was going to stand up for myself. And this time, there would be no turning back. Later that evening, my phone rang. The caller ID flashed James' name, and for a moment, I hesitated. But I knew what I had to do. Mom, James' voice came through, strained and uncertain. We need to talk. I stood up from the couch, looking out the window as the sun set. We do, James. But you're going to have to prove something to me first. Stay tuned for Chapter 9, where James' true feelings come to light and the final confrontation between mother and son takes an unexpected turn. The phone call with James wasn't what I expected. His voice, usually strong and commanding, now seemed small and distant. There was no warmth, no familiar comfort. Only uncertainty, laced with guilt and frustration. He'd been avoiding me, hiding behind his career, his marriage, his busy life. But now there he was, the son I had raised, the man who had walked away from me time and time again, finally reaching out. Mom, he said, his voice low and hesitant. I got your letter. I didn't realize what I was doing. I didn't realize how much I hurt you. I let the silence linger for a moment. It was hard to hear him say those words. Hard to believe them after everything. I had heard apologies before, but I wasn't sure this time would be different. James, I said quietly, my heart heavy with the weight of the moment. I need you to understand something. It's not just about the money or the venue or the wedding. It's about respect. It's about you acknowledging what I've done for you. And it's about you putting your family first, before your image, before your career, before Monica. I could feel the tension on the other end of the line as he absorbed my words. The silence stretched, thick with the weight of everything unsaid. I know, he said finally, his voice breaking. I've been selfish, Mom. I've been so focused on myself that I didn't see what was right in front of me. I didn't see you. I didn't see how much you've sacrificed, how much you've given. And I'm so sorry for that. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. His apology sounded genuine, but I had to wonder if it was too late. Had I already lost him? Had the damage been done? You can't just say you're sorry, James, I replied, my voice tinged with sadness. Words don't fix what's broken. You need to show me that you mean it. You need to show me that you're willing to put the family first. That you're willing to respect me. Because right now, I don't know who you are anymore. There was another long pause before he spoke again. This time, his voice was steadier. I'll prove it to you, Mom. I swear I will. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose what we had. His words hung in the air, but I couldn't bring myself to believe them fully. It was hard to trust, hard to believe that things could change when the past had been filled with so much neglect. James, I've given you everything, I said, my heart heavy with emotion. But I won't keep giving if it means I have to lose myself in the process. I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when it's not. I can't keep waiting for you to wake up. I know, he replied softly. I know, Mom.
I'll make this right.
I won't let you down again. I let out a shaky breath, feeling the tears threatening to spill, but I held them back. I wasn't ready to let myself fall back into old patterns. Not yet. Not unless James proved he was ready to truly change. The conversation ended quietly after that. No grand gestures. No promises that I knew would hold any weight. But a small part of me hoped that, maybe, just maybe, James was finally ready to understand. I hung up the phone, sitting in silence for a long time. My mind raced with thoughts of what would come next. I wasn't sure what to do. Was this enough? Could I trust him again after all that had happened? I couldn't say for certain. But one thing was clear. My relationship with James would never be the same again. I didn't have time to dwell on it for long. A few hours later, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I hesitated before answering. When I opened the door, I was met with a sight that shocked me. Monica. Her face was pale, her expression more vulnerable than I had ever seen it. She stood there, fidgeting with her hands, her eyes darting nervously between me and the ground. This was a side of her I had never seen before. The cold, calculating woman I had fought with had disappeared, replaced by someone who looked broken. "Gladys," she said quietly, her voice softer than usual. I need to talk to you." I stepped aside, motioning for her to enter. I had no idea what to expect, but after everything that had happened, I wasn't about to let her off the hook. Not without hearing what she had to say. She sat down in the living room, her hands still trembling in her lap. I could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the weight of the past few days taking a toll on her. But the anger I had expected to see in her gaze was missing. In its place was a quiet desperation. "I know what you think of me," Monica began, her voice low and hesitant. "And I know I've treated you terribly. But I didn't know how to handle everything. I didn't know how to handle James, or the pressure from his career, or the wedding. I've been so focused on keeping up appearances, on making sure everything looked perfect, that I lost sight of what really mattered." I watched her closely, waiting for the catch. Monica was a master manipulator, but there was something in her eyes now that felt different, genuine, even. "I don't know if you'll ever forgive me," she continued, her voice cracking. "But I want you to know that I regret how I've treated you. I regret making you feel small, like you didn't matter." I was stunned into silence. This was the last thing I expected from her. Was she truly apologizing? Was this just another game, another way to manipulate me? But before I could respond, she spoke again. "And I want to make it right. I'll do whatever it takes. I know I can't undo the damage, but I can try to do better.
For you. For James.
For this family." Her words hung in the air, thick with unspoken promises. I didn't know if I could trust her. After everything, could I really believe that Monica was capable of change? But for the first time, I saw a crack in her armor. For the first time, I saw vulnerability. Maybe this was the start of something different. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of a new chapter for all of us. The following days were filled with more tension, more silence. The words from Monica's unexpected apology lingered in my mind, echoing like a quiet refrain. I kept replaying that moment, wondering if I had been too hasty to judge her. Was this the beginning of real change? Could I trust her after everything? I couldn't be sure. But I couldn't ignore what was happening either. There was something in the air now, something that had shifted between us all. It wasn't just James who needed to prove himself, it was Monica too. The day after her visit, I received another phone call. This time it was from James. He didn't hesitate, he didn't dance around the subject. He spoke with a quiet resolve that made my heart skip. "Mom, I've been thinking," he began, his voice steady. "I want to make things right. And I don't just want to say it. I want to show you. I've been so caught up in everything, my career, Monica, the wedding, and I forgot what matters. I forgot you. But I'm not going to make that mistake again." My heart sank at the sincerity in his words. It was what I had been waiting to hear, what I had longed for from him. But even now, I couldn't help but wonder, was this just another empty promise? Another one of those apologies I had grown so accustomed to? Or was this different? I know I can't undo the damage I've done, he continued, his words heavy with remorse. But I'm asking for a chance. A chance to show you that I can be the son you raised. The son who respects you. Who puts you first. I didn't speak right away. I let his words sink in. I knew that James meant it. He had always meant it when he apologized. But intentions, no matter how good, didn't fix broken relationships. Time and action did. You have a chance, James, I finally said, my voice soft but firm. But you need to prove it. And proving it means more than just words. It means being here. It means showing up.
For me.
For your family. For yourself. There was a long pause before he responded. I will, Mom. I promise you I will. The conversation ended soon after that, and I found myself feeling both hopeful and guarded. The words were nice, but the real test would come in his actions. That evening, as I sat in the quiet of my living room, contemplating everything that had happened, I received a knock on the door. It was late, and I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened it cautiously, and there, standing in front of me, was James. He was holding something in his hand, a small box, wrapped in simple paper with a ribbon tied around it. His face was serious, but there was a look of determination in his eyes. He stepped inside without waiting for me to say anything, his presence filling the space. I know I haven't been the best son, he said quietly, holding out the box to me. But I want to try. I want to start over. And I thought, maybe this is a small step in the right direction. I took the box from him, unsure of what to expect. It was light, small, nothing extravagant, but there was something about the gesture that felt real. I slowly unwrapped the paper, my hands trembling with anticipation. Inside, I found a photo album. It wasn't just any album, though. This one was filled with pictures from my past, pictures of James and me when he was a little boy, of his school events, of our family vacations. There were photos of my late husband, of the holidays we used to share, and of moments I hadn't thought about in years. And at the very back of the album, there was a note, James's handwriting scrawled across the page. It read, Mom, you've given me everything. I've failed you, and for that, I am truly sorry. But this is me trying to make it right. I promise to be here, to be the son you raised. No more excuses. No more running away. Tears filled my eyes as I read his words. The sincerity, the raw emotion, poured out of every line. I set the album down on the table, my hands trembling, and looked up at James. James, I whispered, unable to form the words.
But I didn't need to.
He understood. I'm sorry, Mom, he said again, his voice cracking slightly. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm going to earn it. I swear I will. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. A real one. It wasn't a promise of perfection or a quick fix, but it was a promise of change, of effort, of trying. I stepped forward, wrapping my arms around him in a tight hug. It wasn't just about forgiving him. It was about understanding that we both had been hurt, that we both had been wrong. But it was also about healing, about starting anew. I love you, James, I said softly, pulling away to look at him. But this is going to take time. You can't expect things to go back to the way they were. We have a lot to rebuild. I know, Mom, he said, his voice thick with emotion. But I'll be here for it. I'll be here for us. In that moment, I knew this wasn't just a fleeting apology. James had made the decision to change, and though the road ahead would be difficult, I believed in him. For the first time in years, I truly believed in my son again. But as I looked around the room, I realized there was still one piece of the puzzle left. Monica. I knew this wasn't over. The battle had just begun. Stay tuned for the final chapter, where the truth about Monica's role in all of this is revealed, and the consequences of her actions come to light. The days that followed James's heartfelt apology and the small but meaningful gesture with the photo album felt surreal. I allowed myself to believe that things could change, that this time, maybe, we could rebuild the bond one had spent so many years nurturing. But just as I thought we might be on the verge of something new, I knew there was still one final hurdle to overcome. Monica. Monica was a force of nature, and she had been the one constant in the distance growing between James and me. She was no longer just a part of the equation. She was the dividing line, the one person who had pushed me aside time and time again. But she wasn't going to get away with it. Not anymore. I spent the next few days cautiously hopeful, waiting for the other shoe to drop. I kept reminding myself that while James's apology had been genuine, I couldn't ignore the role Monica had played in everything. She had manipulated James for years, controlling him with her ambition, her need for perfection. And she had done it all while pretending to care about family. That evening, as I sat at home reflecting on everything, the doorbell rang again. This time, I didn't have to guess who it was. The cold, calculating woman who had pushed me out of my son's life was standing on my doorstep. Monica. She didn't wait for an invitation. She walked right in, her eyes flashing with the same arrogance I had seen so many times before. But this time, something was different. There was an almost desperate edge to her movements, a tension that I hadn't seen before. "Gladys," she began, her voice smooth, but there was an undertone of something I couldn't quite place. "We need to talk." I stood, facing her, my arms crossed over my chest. "Talk about what, Monica? The wedding? The money? The way you've treated me?" Her eyes narrowed, but she quickly masked it with a thin smile. "I'm here to clear the air, Gladys. For James's sake. You know how much he means to me. And I know you've been hurt, but I want you to understand something. I never meant to come between you two. It's just, I had to do what was best for us." The words stung, but I didn't let her see how deeply they cut. What was best for you, Monica? Or for James? Because let's be honest here, you've never cared about what was best for anyone but yourself. Monica's smile faltered for just a second, but she quickly recovered. "You're wrong. I've always cared about James. But I had to push him. I had to make sure he succeeded, that he didn't fall behind. I did it for him. For our future." "For your future," I corrected her, my voice sharp. "You've used him, manipulated him for years, and now you want to act like it was all for his good? You've done nothing but make him feel like he owes you everything. And he has. He's given you everything, at the cost of his relationship with me." Monica's face hardened, the facade of politeness slipping away. "You don't understand, Gladys. You've always been in the way. Always. You think I haven't seen the way James looks at you? The way he still turns to you instead of me? I love him, but I need him to be mine, completely. And I've done whatever it takes to make sure that happens." The words hit me like a slap in the face. Monica had always been selfish, but hearing her admit it so coldly was a shock. She wasn't just after money or power. She was after control. She wanted to isolate James from everyone who loved him, to make sure that he was hers, and only hers. I could feel the rage building in me, but I kept my composure. I wasn't going to let her see how much her words affected me. Not this time. "You've destroyed him, Monica. And you've destroyed me. You've torn this family apart piece by piece. But I'm not going to let you do that anymore. Not to me, not to James." Her eyes flashed with anger, but she quickly masked it with a cold smile. "You think you can stop me? You think you can undo everything I've done? James is mine, and there's nothing you can do to change that." I took a step closer to her, my voice calm but filled with resolve. "I won't let you do this to him anymore. He deserves better than you. He deserves to have a family that loves him. A family that doesn't manipulate him, doesn't make him feel like he owes them everything." Monica's face twisted with rage, but she said nothing for a long moment. I could see the storm inside her brewing, the desperation to maintain control, to keep her hold on James. But it was too late. The truth was out, and she couldn't hide behind her manipulations anymore. "You can have him," I said quietly, my heart aching. "But I won't be part of this. I won't be a pawn in your little game. I'll fight for him. I'll fight for my family. But I won't fight you anymore." Monica looked at me one last time, her eyes cold and empty. Then, without another word, she turned and left, slamming the door behind her with a finality that seemed to echo through the house. I stood there for a long time, the silence stretching on. I knew the battle wasn't over. Monica wouldn't let this go. She would try to tear James and me apart, to drive a wedge between us. But I was ready. I was done being silent. Done being pushed aside.
James had a choice to make.
And this time, it would be the hardest choice of all. As the door closed behind Monica, I felt a sense of finality. The storm had passed, but the calm that followed felt different. The next chapter of my life was about to begin. And this time, I was going to be the one in control. The family I had once dreamed of was fractured, but I was determined to rebuild it.
One step at a time.
Weeks passed since the final confrontation with Monica, and in many ways, things began to settle down. The quiet after the storm was something I had never known before. I had expected more backlash, more venom from Monica, but for the first time, she seemed to be backing off. Maybe it was the truth she could no longer deny, or maybe it was the realization that she had pushed James too far. But one thing was certain, things were different now. James, though still distant, had started showing up more frequently. He didn't just call anymore. He came over, spent time with me, shared his thoughts and fears. He wasn't the same son I had once known, but he was slowly becoming someone I could trust again. We weren't back to where we used to be, not yet, but I could feel the connection beginning to heal. One evening, James arrived with a bottle of wine and a hesitant smile. I welcomed him in, offering him a seat at the table where we could sit and talk like we used to. The conversation was awkward at first, but as we drank and shared memories, things began to feel normal again. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. "I've been thinking," he began, his voice a little more steady than usual, "about everything. About you, about me. About what I've been doing wrong." I nodded, watching him closely. "You don't have to explain it all, James. I just want to know you're trying. I just want to know that you're not going to let her tear us apart again." He looked down at his glass, swirling the wine, and then met my gaze. "I promise, Mom. I won't let her. I won't let anyone come between us again. I've been so selfish. I've been running away from everything that mattered. But I can't do that anymore." There was something about the way he said it that made me believe him. His words weren't just apologies anymore. They were the foundation of change. "I'm proud of you," I said softly, my heart swelling with a mix of hope and caution. "But remember, it's not just about the words. It's about what you do. Actions speak louder than apologies. And if you want to rebuild this, if you want to fix what's broken, you have to show up. Every day. Even when it's hard." He nodded, a determined look on his face. "I will, Mom. I'll prove it. One step at a time." The next few months were full of ups and downs, but I began to see the man I had always hoped James would become. He didn't just make promises. He kept them. He visited more often. He supported me when I needed him. He even started doing little things to show that he understood what family meant. The relationship between us didn't instantly heal, but with each passing day, it became stronger. And then there was Monica. She didn't completely disappear. The tension between us lingered, and though she didn't approach me the way she had before, I knew she was still fighting for control. I could see it in the way she tried to manipulate James behind closed doors. She wasn't going to give up her hold on him easily. But James was different now. He saw her for what she was, the woman who had used him, manipulated him, made him feel like he owed her everything. And slowly but surely, he started distancing himself from her. He didn't cut her out of his life completely, but he began making it clear that he wasn't going to let her dictate his choices anymore. It wasn't an easy battle for him. Every time he tried to stand up to her, she fought back, using guilt and emotional manipulation to reel him back in. But James stood firm, and I saw him becoming stronger with each passing day. He wasn't just fighting for me anymore. He was fighting for himself. One evening, after another heated argument with Monica, James came to me, looking exhausted but resolute. "I told her, Mom. I told her that I couldn't do this anymore. That I wasn't going to let her control me. I didn't want to hurt her, but I couldn't keep living for her. I had to live for me." I reached out, pulling him into a hug. "You've done more than enough, James. You've made the right choice. You're choosing yourself, choosing us." That night, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. The weight of the past had not been erased, but it was finally starting to lift. The family I had once dreamed of, the one I thought I had lost forever, was beginning to come back together, piece by piece. The road ahead was still uncertain, and I knew the battle with Monica wasn't over. But for the first time, I felt confident that we would face whatever came next together. That, no matter what, I would never be silenced again. As for James, I could finally say that I was proud of him. Not for the man he had been, but for the man he was becoming. And that, in the end, was enough. If you followed Gladys and James' journey, from betrayal to reconciliation, make sure to hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more. What do you think of James' transformation? Will Monica ever truly let go? Let us know in the comments, and stay tuned for more emotional stories like this.